recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue a retrospective we've been waiting to get back to, and last week we swung back into it with Ghostbusters 2016. This is a look at comedy horror with, this week, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of The Iron Thane, an epic in the world of Shakespeare's Macbeth, available now in Kindle and paper. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, bassist of the band Rise from Fire, co-creator of the comic Psycom, and Tokyopop, from Tokyopop and Clockworks, which is coming in September from Humanoids. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Hello, Drew? Question mark.
Question mark. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Hola, ¿qué tal? Okay. According to the Wikipedia, Behind the Mask, Rise of Leslie Vernon is a 2006 American mockumentary black comedy horror film directed by Scott Glosserman. It stars Nathan Basil, Angela Gertels, and Robert Englund. Although largely filmed in Oregon, the film takes place in a small town in Maryland and follows a journalist and her film crew that is documenting an aspiring serial killer who models himself according to slasher film conventions. The film is an homage to the slasher genre, features cameos from a bunch of veteran horror actors, including Robert Englund, Zelda Rubinstein, and even Kane Hodder, the original Jason. So, let's get our opening
Not the original Jason.
You know what? I'm sorry. The classic Jason.
The classic Jason is fair.
Right. Yes. Yes, indeed. I think of him as classic series Jason, basically. So, okay, let's get our opening thoughts. Drew, you're the one that brought this movie to us. So let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, why have you brought us here?
Well, this is a movie I wanted us to do the first time we were talking about horror comedies, but we did a really great bunch of movies when we did that, but this one we couldn't ever quite fit in. And, you know, I don't think it's a perfect film by any means, but I think it's a really interesting film. I can't quite think of another movie that's put together quite like this, where it jumps in between being like a documentary and then it goes into being just like a full-on slasher movie at points in times. I like the way this movie, I mean, at this point we've seen a lot of movies that sort of dissect horror movie conventions. I like the way this one is so specific on not only slasher movies, but like specifically like supernatural slasher movies. Like this isn't like within the realm of like say like typical serial killer. Like this is looking at like Friday the 13th, the Halloweens, the Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, they name drop Chucky. It's like showing how that theoretically could happen in the real world, and it's a bizarre movie. It's got a really good central performance, and I'm blanking on his name now, but the guy that plays Leslie Vernon, and he was actually my pick to be the Joker after I saw this movie when they were looking for a new Joker with the last Christian Bale Batman movie, because I think he could really nail that.
His name is Nathan Basil.
Okay.
Nathan, how did I forget his name? Like Nathan Basil, but it's a really fun movie, and I think it'll be fun to talk about.
Excellent, excellent. Julia, so I assume this is your first time seeing this. What are your thoughts?
It's the first time seeing it. It's my first time hearing about it. It's my first time conceiving of it. I thought it was really interesting. I liked it a lot. I was like, I like anything that kind of messes with, you know, your perception of reality and how things are and whatever. And so this one was such a trip because, yeah, I find I'm one of these people who's just insufferable with my trying to predict what's going to happen next. And about 90% of the time that works because everything follows formula, as we all know. But this one I kept going. I mean, I did have the idea that the final girl would be the final girl, but I didn't know how that was going to come. Like, I just kept going, well, maybe this could happen, and then I was always off. So I just really enjoyed it. It was a fun little roller coaster ride. I liked all the little nods to the older, to the the famous horror movies. You got Robert Englund in there and Zelda Rubinstein and a whole bunch of little just references here and there, names that are pulled from other things, and lots of fun things. So I enjoyed it.
Outstanding. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I liked it a lot. I mean, in some ways, until the kind of twist, it feels like kind of an extended skit in a way, and that's fine too. But it plays with a lot of things, and I like how, it does a lot of the things that like a deconstruction like Scream does, but in a totally different way, and with, in some ways, more knowledge of how it all works out. Mm-hmm. I really liked it as well. It was really funny. Seeing some of my favorite, actors and actresses, Zelda Rubinstein in it, again, like I said, Robert Englund, playing the classic doctor character, nod to Halloween, all of that stuff is really, Robert Englund as Donald Pleasance, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
If I didn't already love Robert Englund, I would love him for this movie alone because he really nails doing Donald Pleasance in Halloween.
Yeah, it's all of that. It's got so many great bits. And it's found footage, which I normally am like, but the way it plays with that is really cool too. I enjoyed it. I'd heard about it and somehow I'd missed it along the way. I'm not sure why. Maybe I thought it was more serious, and I was like, I don't know. I'll get around to a slasher film. But all the tropes it plays with are really great, and all the conversations about, oh no, you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
These are obviously fans and writers who have really invested in the genre and wanted to make something fun, something cool for fans of this genre, and then bring people in who are like, what's this all about as a comedy? So I thought it did a really good job of all that.
The one thing I'll say in my opening thoughts, echoing everything that you guys said, I think we've had a lot of movies ever since Scream that were pretty aware of horror movie conventions. But if you remember, when we talked about Scream, I bitched a lot about that movie, saying that the movie got a lot of credit for being deeply knowledgeable about the tropes of the slasher genre, when I thought its knowledge could easily be picked up by just sort of reading any given article about slashers. That it was very like, I would say, surface level, very cursory awareness of what goes on in a horror movie. This movie has a deep awareness. This movie understands all the different conventions that, what happens early in a slasher film, what happens later, when secrets are going to be revealed, why some people get killed before others. I mean, this is nowhere near the kind of, just sort of very basic, haha, don't go out alone kind of stuff that you had in Scream. This is a deeply aware thing. In fact, it's so inside baseball that I wonder if that might make it less approachable for some people, where they might watch and be bored or be unfamiliar with those observations. I don't know. It works for me. I also had not seen it before because, other than the fact that Drew said it was a comedy, it sure didn't look like a comedy. When you look at the cover of the movie, it seems like Chrome Skull or any other just slasher film that happens to be
right
out there. So, all right. My first thought when
can I just have a moment to pat myself on the back from being ahead of the curve over all of y'all?
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Gee.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Ego. There's going to be no living with me from now on.
Yeah, I had no idea. You've brought us a good one. I brought you guys Zombies of Morgenthau, and you have brought us The Rise of Leslie Vernon. The story, and I'm going to say this really quickly and then ask a question. So the story follows almost very, very similar to Blair Witch Project. It starts out that way. You have a film crew that is out to interview, in a spooky area, and is out to interview somebody who is planning to become a serial killer. And so this is the first thing I want to talk about, is what the hell is going on in this world? Do slasher films exist in this world? Is that a thing that people watch?
You know, it seems like that slashers, at least the three most notable slashers, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, and Jason Voorhees, exist in some form, but they're probably not supernatural beings like they are in their native cinematic universes, that they are these guys who go through great lengths to appear supernatural.
Yeah. They're like athletes who upped their game, you know, who suddenly burst this sport forth to make it much more complicated. It's a very, very weird world because she's
we at least know. Yeah, we at least know that the movies exist, and we're pretty sure from the way she describes it that the actual slashers she mentioned exist, is what it seems like.
I don't know if the movies exist. I mean, they may have movies, but I don't think they have slasher movies, because it seems like he's describing the way slasher movies work as though instead they are the way real life work.
Yeah.
Like if like somebody wants to be David Copperfield, and he's like, all right, there's always this thing called the turn, and there's always this thing, you know, where you have a big thing on stage, and we call that the weenie, you know, and there's this lingo that he has.
Or we're like a lawyer. I mean, it's like, you know, if you're talking about a trial, you're like, okay, this is the first thing that happens, the second thing, and then you go through the trial, and then there's this person gets present first, and then it's just a formula for how things get done. So this is just how serial killer slashers do it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, the phrasing is important, because to call them serial killers is almost wrong, because they follow the specific conventions of a not just a slasher movie. Again, I said this in my opening thoughts, but specifically supernatural slashers, which is like a genre within the genre. Yeah.
Well, and he even says, what's his name, Eugene, even says, and this isn't, because he goes, you know, they talk about what we do or whatever, and she says, supernatural serial killing or whatever. He goes, no, you don't understand our business. Our business is the business of fear. And so he even takes it a step further than that, saying it's not even just about the supernatural serial killing. It's about instilling fear in people.
Well, they seem almost like even though they have this sort of business-like attitude about it, they almost seem also have this religious reverence going on as well.
It's like Satan worshippers.
He'll be upset. You know, just for the listener who hasn't watched this film. So we start out with Leslie, and we later meet somebody called Eugene. But what Leslie says that he wants to do is he is telling he is a person who has a legendary backstory from when he was a child. He appeared to have died. He's going to come back to the town. He's going to have a reign of terror, and it's going to tick off all these marks that is going to make him be part of this pantheon of serial killers. So what's interesting is he's talking to this film crew, and he's telling them, if you follow me around, I'm going to commit some murders. And and this is where the comedy of this thing is very strange. They seem to be kind of down with that, you know?
I don't think that they have actually believed it's going to happen. Like, I really think that it's almost like they're like, oh, you know, this is a guy who thinks he's going to do this, and he's just, it's, you know, like we're going to watch him, how he would have done. And then I just don't think it ever occurred to them that he's actually going to kill anybody, because when he actually kills the first people, they're all like, holy shit, this is really happening. Oh my God. And then and then she like starts freaking out, going, we can't just do nothing.
Except that's not true. They see him kill Zelda Rubinstein first. Yeah,
that's true. I think the movie kind of forgets that, honestly. The movie sort of forgets that he kills Rubinstein. And just to, like, Tony, imagine this. Imagine you and I are like at an Alamo showing, and we're hanging out with somebody in the lobby.
Well, Jason, wait a minute. You said you thought that she wasn't dead. You said you thought that Doc Halloran actually saved her.
Yeah. That's right. Zelda Rubinstein. So let's save that, because we'll get to that. But Tony, imagine this scenario. Picking on Tony for no reason, but let's say we're at the Alamo and we're talking to somebody, and he goes, "Hey, you want to step outside? I think I'm gonna find somebody on the street and kill them." there's no reason for us to think that guy's kidding, honestly. You know?
And yet you would think that, because nobody would believe that would actually be happening.
I guess you're right.
You would think that.
I guess that's true.
But part of you would kind of be like, that was weird.
It's like I told you, like we were at that thing at Acon, and there was the werewolf guy dressed up, and I said, "What are you?" And he said, "I'm a freelance phlebotomist." And on the one hand, I thought, that actually is a legit thing you can be. On the other hand, if I was watching a TV show, like, that's something like a serial killer would say. Like, someone who extracts blood, like, you could just as easily, and in the show, it would be like, dun, dun, dun. Like,
that's hilarious.
They would, like, everybody watching the show would go, oh, man, he just revealed it without revealing it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know if they're on TV.
Sometimes on TV they'll actually say, I'm an assassin or whatever, and the person will be like, okay, fine, don't tell me what you really do.
So I was talking to Jason about this afterwards, and I was like, if I was in a movie, or maybe this is real, like, that's something somebody would say if they actually just exsanguinate people.
We saw some people in Austin during Halloween one time that were dressed up as a knife and fork, and they were chasing somebody who was dressed up as a steak. And Jason goes, "What if that guy who's dressed up as a steak doesn't actually know those people?"
That'd be amazing. But there's all these things like that where you're like, until it gets real, you don't realize how that's all gonna be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Ozzy and the Bat. He didn't know that thing was a real bat. That's what I'm given to understand.
No, I'm pretty sure the way he states it is true, but wow.
Well, and that's why so many people are don't actually run away when somebody starts shooting, because you just like, that can't actually be what's happening here.
Well, I mean, we've told it 1,000 times, but watching somebody get stabbed with a pin at their party is. That happens so fast. I quickly realized, like, nobody I know immediately has the nerve/reaction time to stop somebody from instantly getting stabbed.
We may have told it a million times, but for those who haven't heard the story, Jason and I had a party in which, we've had it often, in which people will tell stories or do whatever, present something original that's kind of creepy. And some friends of ours who were married at the time told the story, and actually the wife told the story, and the husband kept correcting her. And so at some point in the middle of the story, she just got up to start stabbing him. And we're all kind of like, what's happening? But nobody did anything, because we all kind of assumed and hoped it was a performance as part of the thing.
Well, no, the thing is, if we had seen blood, we would have probably done something, but it happened so fast. No one was able to stop, to grab this person's hand. None of us in the room, just through sheer, like, I can't believe this is happening, / have the reflexes or proximity to stop a potential murder.
Yeah.
Or at least hospitalization. Like, that actually, like, is still something I think about. Like, when you see something, you see, like, some crazy assassin or martial artist, or you in a movie, or you think about, why didn't they do this in some terrible real life situation? That's a situation where I was like, wow, nobody I know, just regular people, could have stopped a potential murder right now.
Leslie Vernon is the most prepared guy, and like, you're talking about, like, people being prepared to deal with something and getting in shock. It wouldn't matter whether or not you're in shock or not, because Leslie Vernon is the most prepared guy in the world. Like, he's 12 steps ahead. He set the thing is like, we're seeing the guts of a horror movie being built up, because he's built up everything about this scenario so he can appear, not only so he can pick off all of his victims, but so he can appear to be more than human. So he is so far ahead of his game. He is so far ahead of everybody else. Like, he's basically built a giant death trap.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no, he definitely is. You're prepared, like you said, because what we see, for those of you who have not seen the film, is as she's interviewing him, he's working out, he's been running, so that he talks about how difficult it is to appear to be able to move as if without really walking or running faster than the people who are running, and so he has to be able to move really quickly. But the thing is, he is superhuman because he survives the last scene.
Right, but that's the trick at the end.
No, that could be a combination of yoga and the fact that he has fire retardant in his suit.
Yeah. No, because she crushed his skull.
Well, let's assume for a moment. Let's save that ending because it's a surprise after the rest of the film. At least in the process of the film, he seems to be just like a Batman-level athlete.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, as you pointed out, he has to be able to do these tricks because he's imagining a world where the things that, and this is what's interesting, is the things that normally the viewer in a slasher movie who is associating with themselves with the victims sees, he's assuming a world where this entire performance art that he's performing is all for the benefit of one person that he might wind up killing in the end. He has to do this shtick where they'll look and like see him for a moment and then look away because of another distraction and then look back, which we saw in Halloween so much with Michael Myers standing there at the shrubbery. And he's saying in this one, he goes, we need to do this. Why he needs to do this, it's because it's some kind of religious conviction on his part, basically. But we need to do this, and therefore I have to arrange all these ways that I can appear in somebody's vision for a moment and then have them get distracted so that I have time to run away.
Well, it's actually a really good example that you gave about David Copperfield. It's being an illusionist.
Yes.
Because that's what they do. I mean, this distraction. I was watching this guy on, Katerina has this, or the youngest daughter has this, watching Brain Games, and it's a really great show.
Yeah.
And they have an illusionist on there, and he was showing how he's doing some kind of card trick for people, and he just puts the card that they're supposed to be talking about, he just put it on his forehead so that the audience can see, that everyone can see it. It's right in front of them, but they're not looking at it because they're looking at his hands.
You're right.
Well,
Mark
and
is
that's
looking
sort of
Yeah.
my point about his skull getting crushed. He knew that they were going to use the juicer, so he could have had that rigged too.
No, that's a good point.
That's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Because he did say, she's like, what's this for? He's like, well, somebody's going to get hurt with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So,
it might be that when she gives the final twist that it actually goes up rather than down. It could just be an elaborate illusion on. It's so weird that this performance art that he's doing is indeed in the end for an audience of one, because we can assume that the camera image that we are seeing does not really exist. I mean,
well, my question is for the three of y'all is, do you think he ever would have allowed this documentary to be screened?
To be shown? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He wants to be famous. All these guys are famous.
But he doesn't want people to know that. Well, I mean, I guess I'm jumping ahead.
No,
I think he
would
because he also he wants to be famous, and why wouldn't?
But he doesn't want people to know that he's not Leslie Vernon. He wants people to and I am jumping ahead, but later on they reveal that.
Let's talk about that right now, because so Leslie says to this young documentarian, "I'm part of this local legend, and it's an amazing local legend they came up with. It sounds just like many others where." Kid gets tossed off a waterfall because the kid is demonic, and there's like all kinds of bad stuff that happened, and he's started to also create this legend, this family connection that the final girl that he's interested in, supposedly Kelly, she'll be at the library and find microfiche saying that maybe she's a long lost sister. And then he gives us this first twist. He gives us a couple twists, but the first one he says is, "Oh, it's fake. I just create these." Most of these old articles that people find when they go through these stories are actually fake stories planted by the killer.
But doesn't he say that after the Mancuso revelation?
No, before.
Oh,
it's
before.
like when the first times when you realize that he's even more of a manipulator than he lets on.
Yeah, he's like the guy. What's the magician who did the unveiling of all the magic tricks? In fact, I think it's called like Behind the Mask or something. It was called like something like that. I can't remember now what they were called, but there was that series where he was revealing how magicians do their tricks. That's what this guy is. He is wanting to be. And I don't think he cares about the revelation that he's not, in fact, Leslie Vernon, but rather Leslie Mancuso, who's from another town.
Nevada.
Right,
Yeah.
Reno, Nevada. That's right.
Reno, right? I don't think he cares because that just means he's like, this is where we're going to unveil. We're going to reveal our Ahab, who is his, who is Doc Halloran.
Yeah, Doc Halloran, which
is a
named
combination
after
of
Dick Halloran.
and also Doc, who's also
Sure.
The Shining. Both things are the Shining references.
Yeah.
And he's played by Freddy Krueger. So, it's like you've got that. So he's so excited to have an Ahab that he doesn't care that his actual story, because he's already told us that his story is BS.
He seems pretty mad. That's actually the scariest he is. It's funny, like, I love all his physical business when he's in his Jason Voorhees mode of, like the way he tilts his head and the way he plays with his little scythe and everything. But the scariest he ever is in the entire movie is when he slams her up against that van, because up until then, like, he just seemed like a character out of a Jim Carrey film.
Yeah,
like,
but he has to be, because he has to be. The whole, again, their point of their lives is to instill fear, and so he has to be unpredictable, and he has to be a little bit unhinged.
I understand that. I'm just saying that he's very scary in a more like human, more human way, right there.
I don't remember why he did that. Why?
Because of the Mendoza thing.
Because
she
talked to Doc.
Real name. Yeah.
She talked to Doc Halloran, and she talked to Kelly.
Yeah, that's right. Suddenly she was not following orders the way that she's supposed to. Now, from the way he's presenting it, he's saying, "Look, I'm doing this really complicated thing. The more extra variables get involved and run around, the more complicated it gets for me. Don't screw this up for me, because I'm going to be a great serial killer," which is nuts. But what's cool is here he says, she goes, "Well, you're really Leslie Mancuso from Reno," and he goes, "Oh, the backstories are fake, and this is amazing. This notion that Jason Voorhees, this famous killer from Crystal Lake, probably wasn't even really a kid who was drowned
and he could be
drowned while camp counselors.
Or he may not even be Jason Voorhees at all.
He could be 5 different people. It could just be like a bunch, like a kind of like a little cult of people who just keep resurrecting this killer.
And I love that there's this guy, is it Stanley? What's the name of the mentor serial killer that they have?
Eugene.
Yeah.
Played by Herschel from The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And although I don't watch Walking Dead, so that means almost nothing to me. But I do know the actor from like a million other things. But so it's Scott Wilson, yeah. So, but Eugene, that his character, he represents a previous generation of killers. So if you think of like slasher movies and things like, Friday the 13th coming around right in, so early in the 80s that it's practically the 70s. If you look before that, you had serial killer movies, but they were usually they were less flashy, less mannered. So you had.
Well, they're also more based in reality. They didn't have like by the time you got to Halloween, they were starting to kind of tack in this like paranormal aspect, which is what this movie plays with.
You're totally right, because Halloween obviously comes for it. Totally good point. But I think if you go back to like, Horror House with Frankie Avalon and other stuff like that, there, somebody's killing people and you just need to find out who it is. But it's just a serial killer. You don't have this sort of extra fear kind of supernaturally kind of element that and Eugene remarks upon that. He goes, I'm part of one generation, and these guys are part of another generation. And he sounds like a baseball player who's talking about the next generation of players who would come along and completely change what an athlete would be capable of. And that's really cool. That's one of those things that's like really, I think, is really well done by this movie, is when they have serial killers talking like baseball players. I enjoyed that a lot.
Well, add to that the fact one of it, I don't know if it's revealed now, but his victim is actually his wife, and she's super happy that she's A, a survivor, and B, that she liked it so much as a weird Stockholm syndrome, and she's super happy for Leslie Vernon to have an Ahab.
So proud.
You're like, oh, there's just so much. This is just so great for you. you guys are, you know, because and how they talk out there, you know, as if it's like a, you know, any kind of coach or mentor, and well, Leslie, you know, you don't want to do that too soon. Think about this. You think about the strategy of it.
Right.
You know, the play-by-play of it. It's, you know, he could have been, you know, a boxing coach or anything like this. That you know how they play it out. And again, this goes back to how great it is that the writers, directors, everybody involved in creating this have a, you know, really deep knowledge of slasher films. And all of that plays out as they, you know, go over all their strategies and how it's going to be. And even if the conventions where we normally like, man, that is really elaborate. You could have done a lot simpler. In this world, that's just the way you do things.
Yeah.
So when they talk about all the stuff that we, you know, may often say like, oh, that's ridiculous, it just has to be that way. Like if you're a slasher, you do things like this, and you kill the librarian first, and you lead them on this way, and you take them to this house, and you know, I have to make the, you know, even the house, he's like mowing the lawn when they see him. He's like, well, you know, you don't want to be a slouch about this. Like, you know, that's the, I'm setting the stage for this thing I'm going to do. That's, all of that's really kind of, really funny that it really plays into the dark comedy of it, because it could have just as easily been like, oh, no, there's a slasher. And what they're doing here really both takes the slasher genre to task, as well as, you know, pokes fun at all. You know, it's you can tell it's done by fans, you know. And I think,
well, you know, we've mentioned Carol Clover a million times, right? How she wrote that book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws.
Men, Women, and Chainsaws. So I was actually just talking about on Facebook earlier today.
Yeah.
Strangely enough.
This is a movie that has read that book, you know, and because Clover went on and on about the fact that the absurdity of slasher genre tropes, nevertheless, you know, didn't keep those tropes from popping up again and again. And actually, if you were the kind of person who watched these movies, you became agitated and angry if it deviated from those things. And just like Leslie will, that, you know, if you know, these things have to go in order. You know, certain characters have to be killed early, and the girl that you've come to think of as the hero, she will not be killed until the end, and she'll probably get away. And there'll even be a change in perspective, you know, so that you'll start following her. It is complicated because he has to hope that, to get away from Clover for a second, Leslie has to hope basically that his final girl will survive, you know, because that's the way the art goes. He has to hope that she'll survive, even if her survival involves killing him. It's the strangest thing in the world, unless, as you guys were pointing out, that killing him actually means that he's going to fake his death. That this performance art that he's doing.
Because he anticipates everything that happens. So he obviously, I think you're right, Drew, that he anticipates that this is how she'll probably kill him, and he's ready for that.
Yeah. He has
now watching this earlier today, you know, like for probably the 10th time now, I noticed things again, like from like the conversations that he has with Eugene early on that kind of set up the switch and who the final girl is. Like when they're talking about, like they never mention the final girl by name. He just says, "Have you picked out your girl yet?" And, you know, like they're kind of like, and I was like, oh, Eugene is totally in on, you know, what Leslie is doing, you know, and like I never really gave that much thought.
I actually did have the thought when he said that it could be her. It could be our heroine. What's her name?
The film student.
Yeah, but I forget her name. But anyway, I actually did have that thought because it made more sense than the other one, but I wasn't sure, and I wasn't sure.
That's it,
Taylor, yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how
that would happen. The only problem I have with her actually being the final girl is that she isn't actually pure, because she's involved herself with this film. And as Tony and Jason were talking about earlier, that means you're going to see a guy set up, you know, a killing spree. And
yeah, you know, she's still their conceit is that she is still just a virgin is what you need, and that's good enough.
Virginal because there's no love interest for her.
It's unclear to me whether they mean literally a virgin and having never had sexual relations, or a innocent person, like in.
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear from when they show the girl, cowgirl on the guy that they're being pretty literal in that.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Because that's the turn is, they bust in.
Yeah, you find
they
out
are who we think is the final girl is riding her boyfriend and tells him to tell out.
One of the best lines, the survivor girl using the nerdy guy's penis like a pogo stick.
Yes. No, it's true. I have to say though, that's to me the most unbelievable thing about the entire movie is that this Taylor Gentry, so-called the documentarian, would in fact be a virgin. She's over 30 years old. It's.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be she doesn't have sex during the course of this movie, and so that's the important thing.
Well, and also the thing is, I believe that what he basically means is innocent versus kind of wanton. I think there's a notion of just brazen wantonness that traditionally slasher films punish, and so if you have a smart mouth, or if you kind of, if you're like PJ Souls in Halloween and you're taking off your clothes and saying things like "see anything you like," if you're slutty, then the serial killer doesn't like you. But if you're nice, then they do. But who knows?
But the weird thing is about it is he is sort of rooting for this girl to. The symbiotic / parasitic relationship between the slasher and the final girl in this movie is very interesting. I mean, not that it doesn't exist in all the movies that this movie is sending up, but the dissection of it it's so and I love her questioning him. So does that mean that you're pro-life? Because he starts talking about how the closet represents
that was really funny.
The world.
Oh God, that was so great and stupid. I mean, it's so wonderfully bad. Go ahead, Tony.
But it does really. Everybody always talks about how horror movies theoretically have this right-wing agenda. It does do a really good job of kind of sending up that notion. You notice Leslie never really answers one way or the other.
Right, because it's an absurd question. And this is the part where she's a parody of a documentarian who just asks inane questions of the people that she's interviewing. When we get to Act 3, the movie does a really weird thing where it completely changes perspective. I mean, in the same sense that traditionally slasher films change perspective from the main killer's perspective, and it swings around to now follow the final girl's perspective. This movie does a weird-ass thing where up until then, our only view of the world is from the first-person perspective of people holding the camera because we're making a documentary. And then all of a sudden, when they decide we don't want to make a documentary anymore, this is neat. The camera drops out of the trees and becomes an omniscient movie-style narrator following these new characters we've just introduced, which are the documentarians. And that's cool. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. That was a really neat moment that surprised me.
Yeah. Excuse me. I really like that too because they changed different. It was different kind of film quality. It was different color. It was different lighting. Everything changed about it, and it was like, oh, okay. So now we're no longer looking at it from their perspective. They're in it.
Oh, can we talk about the film quality for a moment? So, did you guys? What did you guys think about the fact that this film is? Okay, I'm going to be stupid for a second. So tell me. It appears to me the film is only in SD, and it wavers a lot because it's intended to look like VHS. Is that the deal? Is that what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it. Although, I don't know if you guys got weird, crazy screen tearing when you were watching it, but
I've
mine, when I was streaming it,
this for 10 years, so all the streaming questions right over my head.
Does it have weird screen tearing, like when you, which
what's
is
a
a DVD? So, like, it'll be on mine when I was streaming it had, like, basically 4 sections, and then some of them would be slightly wavery.
Oh yes.
No,
I got those. The waveriness. Yeah, occasionally.
And that to me, like, that's one thing. A, VHS doesn't really do that, by the way.
Right.
And B, It looks freaking terrible. Like, that was the one thing that I was like, this. I was hoping it's my stream because that can happen. It's a sync issue, and we try really, really hard making TV shows for the web and stuff to prevent that. But that part drove me just nuts. Like,
Tony, I can only presume that it was on purpose. That's
a terrible idea. That's the one thing I will take. Like, it's funny and it's fun, but that's an awful choice. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look real. And
it doesn't
B,
look like VHS.
It just so many times I was like, is my net connection crappy? What's going on?
What exactly are you describing? Because I'm a little lost there.
You're looking at the screen like two people are talking, and then this visible but invisible, like waver, like a line of waveriness will go like up from the bottom of the
No, that never happens on my DVD.
Oh.
Okay, must be their stream then.
It must be.
Well, that's terrible.
Tony and I both saw it. And
Amazon, please fix your stream.
Right.
Because it's crap.
Here I was thinking that it was something that they had done to make it look like a VHS.
You're thinking that they were kind of trying to do something like with the Tarantino Rodriguez Grindhouse movies, where they were aging, like aging.
Well, I've seen people do what they think is what a VHS does.
Right.
And a lot of times when you do, people have pulled it off, but a lot of times when you do it digitally, in the same way like digital snow, if you know what real TV snow looks like, digital snow looks really weird. I'm just an old person.
It's hard to introduce track. Track mirrors,
so all of that. So, that's at least a plus. So I guess the onus is on Amazon for having a crappy stream, and I wish they didn't have that.
I agree. I watched it on Amazon as well. So it's okay. Well then.
But yeah, Drew. So what you'd see is it would break up especially when they did hard like camera movement, like lots of motion. If you divided the screen into like 4, 2 of those would be out of sync basically with the middle and the bottom would be out of sync with the other parts.
Yeah.
But luckily, that's good. So no taking to task the makers of the film then, because it's only on Amazon. So buyer beware, if you're watching this and you want to stream on Amazon, watch it on disc instead, if possible. Yeah.
It's only worth buying on disc, by the way.
There you go. Always, if possible.
I will say it's interesting. The movie is apparently only in SD, and this would, I assume, have to do with the fact that they're trying to make it look like a film that could be released on VHS.
It's weird because, like, when they do go into slasher movie mode, they kind of try to affect the look of an 80s horror film, but at the same time, like, this movie is set in a contemporary era, like it's not like it's supposed to be set in the 80s. So it's
right.
That to me was kind of, I mean, I get it, it's an homage, but it is a little bit of a weird choice in my opinion in some ways.
It doesn't really bother me because they're in a house out in the woods on a farm. I mean, farmhouses look like farmhouses.
Well, it doesn't bother me as much as, say, like the Bay produced Texas Chainsaw movies, who have that really desaturated look because they're trying to look like it's a high budget movie trying to look like a low budget movie. Like at least this didn't do that.
Well, plus it's way better than hopefully no one has witnessed the Poughkeepsie tapes, which was the one movie that's ever made me want to leave But Numathon, or at least for that movie. Man, so bad, in fact, the crowd reaction that it got shelved for a long time.
Good grief. Wow.
Yeah, truly sadistic and you may be tempted like, it can't be that bad. I don't know if I'm going to believe Tony, but oof. And I met a few people who actually liked it, and I still wonder if we saw what movie they watched, Cause,
Do you mean it was bad because it was like, was it gory? Was it
gory.
Yeah.
It was the conceit. Again, in this one, at least you like when you see Zelda Rubinstein, you're like, oh, okay, this is the movie I'm watching. And that you would see it's supposed to be real, but you would see actors you've seen on like commercials. Like, hey, there's a guy on a comedic commercial. I'm guessing this is probably not real, and it's really sadistic. And it's found footage. Like it's that's the movie that made me go like I'm done with found footage. Until I saw Affliction years later, I was done. That was it. It's so bad. But I think this movie, the whole time I just kept thinking while watching this, like, man, I wish that had been this. I so wish this had been the movie I'd seen. It would have been such a better experience. This movie is actually really fun and good, and the way they twist the conceit and everything is done really well.
I mean, and when you go to those showings, like you go to Button-Up-a-thon practically every year, to my knowledge, and they've got executives there, and those executives are watching what you guys are saying in the lobby and how you're reacting to a film, and yeah, it can kill something.
If I remember correctly, there was supposed to be a Q&A, and that just didn't happen.
Oh my God! Oh, can you imagine?
As a filmmaker, like, as a person who's written a script, I haven't made a film yet, but like, unless they're truly terrible people, which I don't think the makers were. Although I don't know how they convinced at the time. Maybe it's too off topic, but the girl who's in it, I was like, man, I don't know how she did all this. But unless you're just kind of mean spirited, nobody really wants the filmmakers to have such a bad time that they don't even stick. Like, that's just terrible. But man, oh man, that was a rough one. I just wish I had seen this movie instead.
I have to say, this is one of the most interesting anti-endorsements I've ever heard. I mean, I think people now have a good idea not only of Leslie Vernon, but also of the Poughkeepsie tapes, and are probably, like, eagerly Wikipedia searching it right now. So,
and, again, like, the filmmakers made what they made, and I rarely wish ill will on them, and I hope they've made other good stuff, but that was a rough one. Like, don't come after me at a con, please.
So as we mentioned, in Act 3, there's a turn where they realize that Taylor is the final girl, and so in a finale that seems to me looked right out of Friday the 13th Part 3, she goes up against Leslie, and ends up killing him actually with a trick out of The Fly.
So I want to say something about this. He goes throughout the film. He kind of goes through and says how he thinks everything's going to play out. But he's psyching him out because he knows in his mind that this film crew is going to decide that they, or at least he has as a possibility. He has one of his possible ways that this is going to go is that the film crew is going to decide that they can't just sit idly by and they're going to have to try to interfere, and so he's got that planned. So when he tells them, all these guys are going to find the bodies in the bedroom, and then they go, okay, we know that you guys are supposed to find the bodies in the bedroom later, so let's do that now because that will throw him off. They go up there. There's no bodies in the bedroom. He's put the bodies in their van because he knows that what they're going to do is go to the van because they're going to assume that he has not sabotaged the van. So that's where the bodies are. So he's already, like you said, 12 steps ahead of him. And all these different things that he does. And then the other thing he did was say, this place, this shed, is going to be where the final showdown is. But the one thing that doesn't happen that really bothers me, and this is not his thing, it's actually Eugene's. She asks Eugene, how does one survive? And that's when I knew she was the last girl. Actually, I knew that at that point. When she goes, how does one survive being killed by you guys? I'm like, oh, for sure she's going to end up having to be the final girl. Eugene says, pick a focal point and run toward it. Run as fast as you can and don't look back and just keep running. She doesn't do that. And it really bothers me. I really hoped that would be.
She has the option of leaving. She has the option of leaving, and she doesn't.
Yeah, but that bothered me because I thought
it bothered
she
me
asked
too.
the
I thought
question.
after she kills the guy, we really need to see her pick a focal point and run towards
Yeah.
it. Otherwise, because that would have been so satisfying
Yeah.
to hear his line of dialogue pay off.
Yeah.
And
But you would then he would have just killed everybody else except for her.
No, I mean after she.
When it's just her, instead of when she does the skull crushing thing with the apple cider dealie, what is it called? Cider press? Cider press. And then she sets the thing on fire. I think it would have been a better ending to see him walk out of the fire on fire and then her just run. That would have been a better ending to me than the one that we got.
I'm pretty happy with the ending. Like mostly because I'm glad.
Well, then why did it have that line? Is what I don't understand.
Yeah, it was a wasted line. It could have paid off pretty well, but that's okay. That's.
See, I love the sequence between the chubby camera operator who sacrifices himself. I think my favorite bit. That's my favorite bit in the movie because. He runs and, eventually, Leslie has it set up to where, this one area is going to be muddy with stage blood from the looks of it. And so he collapses in this and he actually pulls off that scarecrow mask and tries to reason with him. And
you kind of wonder for a second if he's not going to let him live, and he doesn't.
Yeah, well, he doesn't say anything because it almost looks like he's got himself worked up into some kind of like trance at this point. And I don't know. I think it's like, I think as far as just like a scene of like pure horror, like that's maybe the best scene in the whole movie.
The horror of when he's being killed, or at which
the horror of trying to reason with somebody that and then suddenly realizing they're completely off their rocker, and just like
and we've all had that
on his
experience.
face.
We've all had the experience, I think, of seeing someone that you thought you knew totally change and be this like kind of monstrous person because they've put up whatever walls, they've put up whatever masks. This
is a very scary moment. You're totally right. It echoes the really heart-wrenching death of the orderly in the hospital in Rob Zombie's Halloween. I thought this was the best thing in that movie is when he's going.
And he kills Danny Trejo.
Yeah, Danny Trejo is going. I was always nice to you, Mikey. You remember me, and Michael Myers is not to be reasoned with,
and this character was called Todd, I believe. Is that the one or Doug? Which one's the
I don't know. One looks like Dave Grohl and one doesn't. And
I don't know.
Well, also, the fact that that's such an impactful horror moment really, again, goes back to the filmmakers. It's not easy to turn it on its head and make an actual horror movie out of this comedy. The fact that they do that and they know the tropes well enough and they're able to make effective horror bits that's pretty awesome as well.
Well, and I think everything that leads up makes this have more impact because, this is a guy that previously Leslie has been joking around with, that he's been friendly with, and, less than like a 10-minute sequence away from this, he gives everybody like, oh, it's nice knowing you, good luck with the rest of your life. Little does he know that the rest of his life is approximately 20 minutes. It's interesting. It's interesting stuff because again, we get to see a slasher movie built up from point A, and we don't, because this has like that found footage, documentary vibe to it. You don't necessarily think of the guys from being from behind the camera being a victim in the way this guy is a victim. I mean, unlike Blair Witch, like you have a good look at this guy because the perspective has changed.
Yeah, right. No, that's a really good point. So, we should probably go to our final thoughts and then get our endorsements. So let's go in the same order. Drew, Julia, Tony, and then if I have anything to say, I certainly will. Drew, final thoughts on this really interesting movie, Behind the Mask, Rise Leslie Vernon.
I'm glad we got to discuss this. I guess if I had one other final thought is that Talking Heads, Psycho Killer has been used a lot in a lot of movies to the point where I felt like it needed to go away, except in this movie. They played that over the credits, and there's no other song that would have fit more perfectly than that song on the credit sequence. Fun movie, fun conversation. If there are other people out there in internet land who are not aware of this movie, which is now probably, about 10 years old, maybe this is your cue to check it out.
Excellent. Julia, what are your final thoughts?
Well, like I said, I just thought it was very interesting and innovative, and that's unusual for me to say because I like a lot of the films that we watch. I think they're fun, but I almost never think they're innovative. I always feel like they're just another good variation on something that we've seen before. And this one is a variation, but it's an innovative one. It's creative, and I just enjoyed it. It had some funny lighthearted. It was almost like a Christopher Guest horror movie, like horror mockumentary.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a really good point. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I like the movie a lot. I was surprised. I was like, how did I miss this? While I was watching it, it's well done. The comedy is great. The dark comedy parts are great, and being able to turn it around, like I said before, into an actual horror movie that works. As well as it does. I think that's great. I really enjoy it and would highly recommend it to horror movie fans who want both a dissection of what they love as well as poking fun at the things that should be poked fun at, and just an enjoyable, it's a quick 90 minutes as well. It's really good. Get it on disc, though, instead of Amazon streaming if you can.
Yeah. I was really shocked by the Amazon streaming mishaps, and that was very weird. So I'm curious, if you rented it on Vudu, would you get some of those same? It's weird because I watch Amazon streaming stuff all the time, and Tony does as well. So that means there's something about this particular title and how it's been loaded up. So anyway, I got nothing to add other than I agree with what everybody said. This is a smart movie that knows a lot about horror in ways that other movies that claim to can't even touch it. So that's pretty amazing. Let's get to endorsements, whatever you're really into or want people to check out that is new this week. And there's an awful lot out there that is new, but lay it on us. So, Drew, what's up?
Selfish endorsement. I am going to be at Texas Comic-Con on Friday and Saturday, plugging Halloween Man, the horrormovies.net, this show. I'll have a table in the big guest room, so come on by, say hello.
And you want to tell us about Anime Fest as well? We should.
We're all we're all going to be at Anime Fest.
No, I won't.
Not Julia. We'll be very sad that Julia will not be there, but we're as far as this weekend, if you are in the San Antonio area, and you want to come by and say hi, please do. I'm very friendly.
Texas Comic-Con this weekend.
Texas Comic-Con this weekend. Right this weekend. I have been so busy, I really have not gotten into any new things. I've been debating, continuing our conversation from last week. I've been debating the new Ghostbusters a lot online. So that's really, unfortunately, how much of most of my free time has been. Unfortunately, I guess, depending on your perspective, but that's how most of my free time has been spent.
Excellent. Julia, what about you? What do you have to endorse?
I happened upon a podcast. I don't actually do much podcasting, but I found via NPR, Radiolab presents More Perfect, which is a Radiolab series on the Supreme Court, and it's just, I thought it was just, well, the first episode anyway that I listened to was fascinating about why how the capital punishment, how the death penalty in this country came to be the lethal injection, how lethal injection came to be the way it is, and how this, like, the drugs are so hard to find, and people go to other countries to get the drugs, but the other countries don't know that they're using them to kill people, so then when these folks go and tell them that, then they start shutting down. So it's this fascinating series where actually the journalists are kind of becoming the story in a lot of ways, at least in that one episode. I haven't gotten a chance to listen to the rest of them, but just from that one, I thought it was really interesting. So if you are a policy wonk or a Supreme Court junkie or any of those things, or just podcasts about newsy things, check out Radiolab Presents More Perfect.
Outstanding. Tony, do you have anything going down?
Well, again, believe the hype about I finished Stranger Things, and the hype is to be believed. I'm trying to think what else.
And we may review that, I think.
We watched the first episode, and I think we're actually maybe going to do an episode of this podcast covering Stranger Things.
Oh, that'd be great.
That's what we're coming around to, yeah.
I'm trying to think. I have been late night. Insomnia has kept me up, or vampirism, whatever, depending on your theory.
That bat got you after all, didn't it, in Scotland?
So there has been Shaw Brothers Universe has released basically links to a huge selection of Shaw Brothers films. And it's all the links of, like, you can get this on Hulu, you can get this on Netflix or whatever. So there's been a huge flood on Netflix of Shaw Brothers stuff, as well as Amazon Prime. If you go into their action adventure area, there's everything from, like, the good Shaw Brothers stuff and, like, newer stuff with, like Ip Man series, and to, like, Z-grade Hong Kong and Taiwan, either Bruceploitation films or stuff like that. And I have just been watching so much good stuff and just how did this get made kind of stuff and everything. If you're a martial arts fan, that's what I'm still. I can't remember if I endorsed that before, but anyway, that's still what's keeping me going. Yeah. Also, again, check out Shout Factory because they've got a bunch of new releases, like I think Exorcist 3, which I pre-ordered, and I'm waiting for The Thing. So I'm pretty excited about all of that.
We've been watching a lot of the Shout Factory app, actually, with all the MST3K, like, shorts.
Oh, yeah.
That.
Last night I got, I think it was called Witchery, which has David Hasselhoff in it.
Oh, and Linda Blair, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant. That I forgot. That's what was on my list. It is.
Oh, God.
It is something else.
It's like
a
movie version of sleazy horror paperbacks from the 70s.
Oh, yeah. And that's on Shout Factory, and you can watch it for free. So you should check out Witchery for the sheer head-scratching. And he's so sleazy. Hasselhoff's so sleazy in it, too.
You act like there's any other version of Hasselhoff.
Yeah, but
Germans love
David
Hasselhoff.
Yeah, but this is, you have to see it. It's a thing. Like, yeah, that's another late night. Like, sure, I'll check out Witchery. Whoa, that's Hasselhoff. That's the Hoff. Because I didn't look at the description at the time, and I was like, oh, this sounds. Hey, guy, there's a woman in black haunting this guy. I'll go, whoa, yeah. So you should Shout Factory app on your Roku or just go to Shout Factory TV. In addition to all their other stuff like Ultra Q, which is Kaiju meets Outer Limits and all of that. There's also these great like crazy horror movies. They just pop up and you're like, whoa, that was cool. So you should totally do that.
Factory. That's a really good tip. Thank you very much. All right, so what I will say is Anime Fest coming up in August So as Drew mentioned, he's this weekend at the Texas Comic-Con in San Antonio. And then in August, in about 3 weeks, we're going to be a full contingent of the podcast is going to be at Anime Fest, and I believe on Saturday night we're going to do a live podcast. We're also going to be doing panels starting on Friday through Sunday, and so
lots
of panels.
Panels.
Yeah, so it's going to be really great. That's in Dallas. So if you can make it to Dallas, you should totally come and join us and see our live panel and ask questions. And I can't wait. That'll be a lot of fun. So thank you, everybody. I'm very excited that we got a chance to talk about Behind the Mask, the rise of Leslie Vernon, and we will be back very soon. And if you enjoyed this, then consider joining us in Texas. But beyond that, tell your friends, play it for them, kidnap them, bring them to a nearby farmhouse.
I never advocate the kidnapping. I don't know why you always said that.
Introduce them to the podcast, pry open their eyes so that they can look at the MP3 playing. We want to hear your comments on the Facebook page, and we would love to read your reviews on iTunes. I'm serious. It makes all the difference in the world, because the more reviews we get, the more people can find the show. Have a fabulous, fabulous week, everybody on the show and everybody listening. Thank you very much. Bye.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Night.